Hi, church. Pastor Jeff here with another Trinity check-in, along with
Sophie. I am your lay member to annual conference.
I joke because at annual conference, everybody hits "your" really hard for some reason. Anyway,
It's true. I am your lay member to annual conference.
I'm not saying it's not true. So the reason I have Sophie here today is we just came back from annual conference. So annual conference happens, you'll never guess, yearly, and it's all the churches in all the United Methodist churches in Nebraska and Kansas together. And it's where some call it the basic body of the United Methodist Church, where we do a lot of business. We worship together. We do ordinations of new pastors. We have so many shared ministries, like the camps, for instance, and it's when we come together to talk about it, to make any decisions. But to be honest, the biggest part of it is just the connection. Ever since John Wesley, literally back in the 1700s, we've been a denomination that values those connections to one another, that none of us do this alone, whether it be pastors or lay people or churches don't do this alone. And annual conference is our chance to be together. So what we're going to do in this video is give you an update of what happened at annual conference. There's plenty worth sharing. I will say there were no big controversies this year or anything monumental, which is kind of nice after the last few years. But still, plenty worth talking, and it will give you a look at that next level of church and what happens, and I think that can be inspiring too. So, one boring thing to start out with here. Well, I say boring. It's important. Any of you who've done leadership know that strategic plans matter.
Yes.
Even though they're rarely the most exciting thing to talk about. And now that we've finished the disaffiliations and the churches that left the denomination, it's the right time to take stock of who we are. And I'm not going to go into, you know how consultants are. There's the points, and we're not going to go into all of that. But know that we're doing it, so that we can be organized, so that we can be as effective as we can be. It helps to put that together. Another thing that is normally boring to talk about, but I think is more interesting and spiritually interesting this time, is the conference budget.
Yes.
Go.
So part of the strategic resolutions was taking a look at how the overall, I think, financial health of our conference and looking towards the future. We have a good amount of money in our reserves still that we draw on every year to support the conference budget.
In a healthy way. We
Yes.
draw down a percentage that lets it,
And then, of course, there's a portion of the budget that also comes from apportionments, and we are doing well on paying, 87.7% of our apportionments conference-wide.
Trinity pays 100, by the way.
There you go.
But as a whole conference,
Yes.
that's a pretty good percentage.
And so that was actually an overage of what they had budgeted for this past year. So they're sending $500 back to local churches, and we get to choose something cool to do with that money.
They told us, they're not going to check, but they told us don't pay the light bill.
Yeah.
Find something good. Find something missional. Find something of service you can do with that $500. So, Church Council, I'll be coming to you shortly.
But they also, I think, very responsibly are looking at what our financial future is going to look like as those apportionments probably decrease over time.
We're going to have a lot of especially rural churches
Yes.
that continue to close, and that's going to affect the budget for what we do together.
So our budget has, the last couple of years, gotten a little bit smaller every year, and overall I think the stewardship of where we send our money, of our apportionments, is really outstanding.
My goodness, that's a good team.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they do a really great job also of relaying that information back to us, so that I always leave having I feel like I really know what's going on conference-wide, which that's a really big budget. And they break it down, make it digestible, so that I think everybody feels like we...
Not so easy to do.
Yeah.
And this is kind of budget adjacent, but our pension team also does a very good job. It's kind of the equivalent of of Trinity's endowment committee,
Yeah.
looking at the investing side of things. Kind of, not a direct comparison. I'm arguing in my own head right now. But the pension funds have done well for pastors, especially those in the previous eras. There's a whole thing of different of some of the eras have different requirements. but they've done well enough that there's a surplus for some of the retired clergy, more than is needed to support them at the level, and so they're using that excess to give back to churches. So when we come to next year, so every church pays into the pastor pension fund the same amount. That's part of how that works, and they are going to be offsetting that so that churches have to pay a little bit less next year because of how well that's done.
I think
it's neat to see. We give money to the conference, but so much of it flows back, not just in support and administration, but like
actual cash.
Yeah.
I think there's a running theme this year of supporting the local church, and the conference is really doing everything they possibly can to make sure that every local church has the support that they need.
Trinity really is an exception in a very good way, because we are a thriving local church, but this is an era when it is very difficult to be a mainline denomination and a church in the way we are. And I think sometimes we forget that as Trinity because we are thriving here, but so many of our sister and brother churches are struggling, and it's good to see the conference helping.
And to great success also, we saw lots of stories about how churches this last year used grants from the conference to do different things in their local communities that were really impressive and really cool too. So it's being put to good use.
Another thing we do at annual conference are the resolutions, and we're always ready for the resolutions. It's like
that means floor debate.
Yeah, floor debate. It means social issues, and if you want to be on the snarky back row side of things, which, let's be honest, that's where I tend to be in a lot of these conversations. I care very much. I just do so with snark, right? You read them in the workbook ahead of time, and you're like, okay, let's grab the popcorn. This will be a good show. And it was a good show, but at the same time, when somebody finally got to a microphone and called the question and it came up to a vote, it wasn't quite like, they weren't quite unanimous, but darn near. Like, from where I'm sitting, I didn't see a single hand against. I'm sure there were a couple that were behind me, but there were three social ones that especially came up. I've got the list here. Do you remember them?
Yes. The first was supporting migrants and refugees and other, I think, immigration in general, and that, like you said, was fairly smooth. I think there were a couple speeches against, but went pretty little weaker on that one. Yeah.
I was especially moved because there was one of the youth got up to a microphone, the daughter of an immigrant, and she talked about microaggressions and just how common they are. And I will tell you, she read to me as awfully American, and yet she experiences microaggressions. Those who appear more immigrant receive even more still, and the support that we get. So this resolution had no teeth. It didn't actually do anything. It's just support and encouragement.
Our position.
And she talked about how important that was, just to encourage and support.
And I think it's important also to point out that we are a church that is made up of immigrants, and a lot of our pastors are immigrants as well. And so it really is something that directly affects not just the communities that we live in, but the church itself, and kind of the way that, we're a worldwide church. We have people who come to and fro from all different kinds of places, and so it really is something that affects the day-to-day operations of our church too.
The next one we took up was Israel-Palestine. There is a document called Kairos Palestine 2, the second edition of it.
Yes.
And last year we did a resolution. Was it on one or was it separate?
No,
I don't know.
Adopting the statement from the World Methodist Council condemning genocide in Palestine.
And there was a fair bit of floor debate on what constitutes genocide. Something that none of us really have the expertise in, but it wasn't really about that, right? This year, however, that word was in there and didn't seem to come up as much.
No, and this was specifically, so the Kairos 2 document is a call from Christians within Palestine who are asking for support from other Christians around the world. And so that's specifically where this is information from a Christian organization that's working within Palestine, asking specifically for our support in the ongoing genocide in Palestine.
And the one successful amendment to that resolution was to expand it from only caring about the
Yeah.
Christians, which was not said but kind of implied.
Specific phrasing,
But,
supporting our Christian brothers and sisters
Right.
in Palestine, to just supporting people in Palestine.
People in Palestine, which I think was a good one, and that passed. And then the transgender one. You want to do that?
Which has a little bit more practical effect than the other two, because it's not just affirming our position on something, it also had financial implications. My understanding is was a previous grant to specifically fund LGBTQ plus ministries within our conference. That grant will expire at some point, so this was establishing a particular budget line to fund that grant into the future, or to fund that budget into the future. But also just to express our support for transgender members of our community in a time that has been really fraught. We've seen a lot, specifically in our conference in Kansas and Nebraska, laws being passed that specifically target trans people and their right to exist in our spaces and to live public daily lives. And we have a really great, we have great support for queer people within our conference. Mm-hmm. There are really good ministries that are happening, led by really awesome people.
We're doing Pride in 2 weeks?
We are, yeah. We'll be at
week and a half, whatever it is.
Star City Pride on the 13th, but...
Fill out a leaf Sunday.
Yes.
But I think my favorite moment from that debate was... so we were sitting kind of in the middle, and you have microphones. So if you want to speak or make an amendment, whatever, you go to one of the microphones and are recognized by the chair. There's like 1,000 people there, 1,500, I don't know, a lot of people. And from where we were sitting, we could see that the microphone on the left, like the youth cleared the benches like a baseball game with a fight. Like they just clumped around a microphone with so many youth. And then to our right, there were 3 old guys at the microphone. And I love old guys, don't get me wrong. But it was interesting seeing that. And there's that little piece of you that thinks, oh no, what are the old guys going to say? And they were all in favor of it.
All of them were green cards, which is to speak in support of a resolution. So that it was really affirming to know that we are in a community that has great love and support for the queer members of our community and in our neighbors.
And I think all three of those resolutions, I think all 3 of them included having the conference secretary write to the legislators in Kansas and Nebraska to tell them what we as a church, we each should be writing our legislators regularly, I believe. I know I do, but it carries that little extra oomph when it comes from a body of our size. So that's something to be proud of. Let's see, what else we got? General Board of Global Ministries, which oversees UMCOR, among other things, but also our missionaries that are overseas, commissioned a new missionary from our conference who is going to Kenya, where we have a relationship, and I didn't get a chance to talk to him. I don't know what his deal is, but I want to. Might be an opportunity there, but it was kind of neat to see the commissioning ceremony.
It was very cool. That's the first time I've seen that at an annual conference.
I've seen like 1 or 2 others over the years, but it
really special.
Doesn't happen every day. Yeah. Let's see. We had the 70th anniversary of women's ordination, and as much as I want to say, why didn't it happen 1,930 years earlier? But that said, we were I think we were like the 2nd major denomination to affirm and allow women's ordination, and that has hit 70 years, and so it's good to affirm. We had a number of great guest preachers.
Yes. So at one of our services, Charlotte Abrams, who was the first Black woman to be ordained in the Great Plains Conference.
Nebraska Conference, right?
Yes.
Former Nebraska Conference?
Former Nebraska Conference. Gave the sermon, and she was...
Oh, it was good. There's a bit I'm going to steal.
Which I know a lot of you already know her. I talked to a few people on Sunday that were already very familiar, but she was a great preacher. And overall, we had really great guest speakers. If
anyone's interested, by the way, I believe the recordings are on greatplainsumc.org.
Yes, I think so. Our keynote speaker for the 2nd year in a row was Dr. Ashley Boggin, who is the secretary of the General Board on Archives and History. And
an academic seminary professor on history.
And she gave another really good, last year's was also very interesting. And we had another one this year. She's got another new book out that I will be picking up. And then also we had a guest, the bishop from the Episcopal guest this year for the ordination service, who is the bishop of the Desert. What did we decide
Desert
it was?
Southwest?
Desert Southwest and
Arizona,
New
Mexico.
Mexico conferences.
Yeah.
Who is originally from the Philippines and is the first Filipino bishop in the church, who gave a really great sermon that I think followed a thread I saw throughout the week. He went through the history of the ordination of our bishop back to Coke originally, and through the
Coke being one of the original...
Yes.
American bishops.
Coke and Asbury.
Past John Wesley. There's a story there, but that's for another time.
And so that was really cool to see, just to be able to trace back the history of
So everybody being
our
ordained
conference.
that night
Yes.
knew that the hands laying on them, that's the heritage going back to Bishop Coke.
Yeah.
So that was neat. We had a good worship. One of them, we have a actual country music artist serving one of our churches, Brookville, Kansas, famous for its chicken. If you know, you know. But he's in that church now, and he basically did a concert. I mean, it was worship. It wasn't a concert, but it was kind of a concert. That was awesome.
It was good, yeah.
Jaron Bell is his name. I can't remember if I said that.
And he's serving as a DSA, so he's
he's not ordained. He's a lay person serving a church.
And he is both a DSA and a full-time touring musician, which is pretty cool.
And he just got signed to a label, so he's bona fide
on his
now.
way up. Yeah.
And really, really good.
Yeah.
Let's see. Youth worship was excellent.
Yes.
It always is. Youth worship is always a highlight. I just have to say it was especially good for me this year because one of our youth that splits his time. His real church is Southgate, my wife's church, but he comes to the youth group here. What you're seeing on the screen right now is Ricky Slater playing bass, and it was awesome. It was his first time playing with a group like that, and he did so well. But the youth sermons, all of that was excellent. Let's see. Part of annual conference is it's family reunion. You run into people you haven't seen for a while and make those connections. And one of the most heartwarming this year was Jim and Carol Brewer. And I saw them a bunch of times. It was so good to see them and to stand around and talk for a while and to reconnect. If you don't know, they were a part of Trinity for a long, long time, including while they were still serving in various capacities with the conference. They're retired now, but they've now moved to Topeka to be closer to Scott and his family. Scott is the assistant to the bishop in the conference office in Topeka. But we miss them here, and it was very good to see them. I have to say, Scott always does humorous bits before breaks, and one of them was on how we need more boredom in our lives,
yes.
And he talked about how growing up as a child of two pastors, he knows a thing or two about boredom.
And I think he was really only half joking.
Yeah, and it was great to walk by the Brewers after that and just... They agreed. They're still proud of him, just for what it's worth. Yeah. So, okay, I have one last thing I want to end on. Mm-hmm. Did I forget anything before that?
I don't think so. No, I think you got a pretty good recap. We also had a district brunch, so we met with our district superintendent, who many of you recently met, Reverend Livingston, who was here to run our church conference, and other pastors and lay people from our district, and that was a newer thing this year. That was really interesting and gave us an opportunity to make
I got to know a couple
connections.
Pastors in the district that I'd seen but never really had a chance to talk to.
Yeah.
It's that connection again.
Yeah.
But okay, so last and most certainly not least, before conference began, there was a special event that was Methodist Trivia. And while I was still driving to Kearney, I get a text from Sophie that said,
"Guess who won Methodist Trivia?" Which I can't take all the credit. I had a really great team.
It was a team, yeah.
We had a team of 4 people. They really carried a lot of the weight. But I will say I did pretty well in a couple categories. So I would like to take the point of privilege to say the United Methodist
Point
Church...
of privilege. She's been in Robert's Rules land for a while.
The United Methodist Church has an incredibly interesting history. There are so many interesting trivia fun facts, and it very closely mirrors American history also. So I think especially now in our current political climate, it's a really good idea to look back at the church's history and see how we've reacted to similarly volatile times in American history. And I think that I learned a lot more out of this game of trivia than I did probably the rest of the annual conference. No offense to, any of the very important business we did.
Yeah.
But so much about the history of women in the church and deacons, and the good work that the church does and has always done and grows into more and more, I think, every year. It was a really fun experience. And just to be in a room full of, Methodist nerds. It was really exciting.
I was not in that room, but I can only imagine the Metho nerd
held, by the way,
vibe.
at a brewery in Kearney that's called the Upper Room, if that gives you any idea of the state most of us were in also. So it's a pretty boisterous place.
Should be called the Foundry, or I'm trying to think of Methodist names from the past.
It's a Catholic brewery.
Oh, it's a Catholic brewery? Okay, well, I'll take it. That's good. That's a No, well, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you to my team.
It was good, but I think it's good to know that this happens, and this is, Trinity doesn't stand on its own. No church does, but especially no United Methodist Church, and I wanted you all to see it and get a taste of it. And if you all are ever interested in participating in an annual conference, there are lots of ways to do that. Not just being a delegate, there are also committees and other groups to be a part of. So let either of us know, and we would be happy to get you more involved. In the meantime, I hope the work that we were sent to do that day and that we sent ourselves out to do after church on Sunday, I hope you're out there doing it. We'll see you soon, church.